Hello there, and welcome to Nowhere to Hide. Well, it's a day for popping corks in Idaho. We have educational choice. It took a long time to get here, and some people are very happy. A lot of people are very happy. Some people not so happy. We'll look at some of the headlines and explain what exactly has happened with school choice and why today should rightly be considered a victory.
All reporters are biased, the Idaho Press Club are biased, all media, newspaper, radio.
To be completely blunt here, Brian, and there are plans to expand
indoctrination.
That's right.
Well, Idahoans are also concerned.
Horror shot. That line would be moving a little bit farther west.
I'm like crying.
Nobody wants to see
Dark money is influencing policy.
Once again, welcome to Nowhere to Hide. I'm happy to say that I've been watching this school choice battle fight out for a long time. And it's been happening in other states, and Idaho has come very close the last few years, but we finally got it. Governor Brad Little today signed into law the school choice bill that will be a good beginning. And I say this with the understanding of, this is not a be all end all kind of piece of legislation, but it definitely cracks open the door for parents who are looking for the opportunity to provide the best education for their children outside of the government-controlled school system, which apparently the number of people who work within the system, and particularly the administrators and the bureaucracies associated with it, that is just the scariest thought ever. Whatever will we do? So I want to show you a few headlines. And, I was anticipating, with as hard as this has been fought over the years, I thought this is probably going to bring out some real tears on the part of some of the people who have fought so hard or advocated against school choice. And, well, I wasn't too surprised. Here's the Idaho Capital Sun. And notice the focus of the headline here. Idaho Governor Brad Little signs law that directs state funds into private school tuition. That was one of the big sticking points here, because what they call state funds are actually taxpayer funds. The state has no funds of its own. All it gets from the taxpayers. And they are the ones who are productive. They are the people who go out there and create the value that the money represents. The state has no funds of its own. It can only take. So when it says state funds, we're talking taxpayer funds, but these are the very same taxpayers who will be served by this legislation. Okay, let's take a look at another headline. It's funny that this last article, let me go back here for 1 second, okay? This is from Ryan Soup. Ryan says, hey, this is the story. He didn't write this headline, I don't think, because this is the original story from which the Idaho Capital Sun got their story. Look at that headline. This is so much more straightforward. Governor Little signs private school tax credit into law. Now, private school, we're supposed to look at private schools with some kind of suspicion, perhaps a bit of horror, but nonetheless, this is a much more down-to-earth headline and much more telling of, what actually happened here. Not as much drama, for one thing. This is the Idaho Statesman. And I expected them to be absolutely beside themselves. But really, the worst they could do is try to tie it to Trump, right? I guess if we don't like Trump, let's see if we can tie it to him. Trump endorsed this contested Idaho bill. Governor Little issued his decision on school vouchers. Now, it's not a voucher. So there's a lie in that headline, but this is the worst that they could work up. Frankly, Statesman, I'm a little bit disappointed. I expected that there would be a little more harumph in your presentation. But what we're talking about here is a refundable tuition tax credit. That is not the same thing as an education savings account or ESA, nor is it the same thing as a voucher. But voucher is the cuss word that the Idaho establishment, in all of its variations, has chosen to use against school choice. But we tried to tie it to a President Trump, and I love the clickbaity nature of this too. They don't actually tell you he signed it into law. They just say, well, he issued his decision. Wouldn't you like to know more? Okay, click, click, click. Here we go. This is from Idaho Press. Again, straightforward. I got to give them credit. Little signed school choice tax credit bill into law. This is probably the best headline I've seen. Although I have to admit, I watched, I wanted to see what KTVB had to say about this. And frankly, I thought they did a good job on this too. This was very straightforward. And I just, look, I'm not saying, they said it just the way that I think they should say it, but these last two headlines are much more objective in how they approach it. Idaho governor signs parental choice tax credit bill into law. Those are the facts. There's nothing emotional to lead you into, oh, should I clutch my pearls or should I, open a bottle of champagne? Now, of course, the subheadline gives you a little more of, okay, so here's what you should probably think about this. And the Parental Choice Tax Credit Program, which would provide up to $5,000 per K through 12 student for expenses that could include private school tuition, was signed into law. But again, kudos to those news organizations who managed to remain objective. It's not an easy thing to do, and this is one of those ideological places where it really gets fought out. Now, this is from the Idaho Freedom Foundation, and frankly, they deserve to be able to portray it in this way. Big win. House Bill 93 signed into law. Idaho has school choice. And well, actually, I'll let them tell you what their breakdown of this is. Today is a great day for educational freedom in Idaho. Earlier today, Governor Little signed House Bill 93 into law, giving a tax credit to families of up to $5,000 per child to use for their own education choices. Now, the beauty of this is that money is their money. It's not going through a whole bunch of administrative hands with, people scooping off a generous amount for overhead. This is really smart. This is the advantage this has over vouchers or educational savings accounts. The work of the Idaho Freedom Foundation toward this goal for more than 12 years has paid off. Our team has meticulously pointed out the failures of the broken public school system, the constraints on families wanting better options, and of course the legislative blockades put in the way of education freedom. Now, the Idaho Freedom Foundation also says we've advocated, educated, and lobbied diligently. Today, our efforts were rewarded, but the Idaho families are the true winners. This bill is the first step in accomplishing true school choice for years to come. The legislature's become more liberty-friendly over the years, and we hope to build on the bill to make it deregulated, universal for everybody, not just the people, at the lower end of the economic spectrum, and cost-effective in order to serve all of Idaho's families. So thank you to all who called, emailed, and petitioned Governor Little to sign this bill. We were up against Goliath in the form of the Idaho Education Association, Save Our Schools, and other teachers' unions-backed organizations pressuring Governor Little to veto. It's because of our massive advertising campaign and all of your efforts that we pushed this bill across the finish line. Now, this raises the question, okay, so what comes next? This a one and done thing? It's actually it's a start. But I was actually very interested to see that there was a familiar name that popped up who is ready to carry this ball forward to the next logical point. Where do we build on this? And this is Brandon Durst, who says it took over a decade, but here we are. Idaho has expanded its school choice. He says, I'm delighted that years of effort are finally bearing fruit, but he warns we mustn't be complacent. So he says in the coming weeks, he'll be filing a motion for a declaratory judgment with the Idaho Supreme Court to take that $5,000 cap, or to take the cap off the parental choice tax credit. And I said 5,000. I mean, I think they've capped it at a total of $50 million is budgeted for this. And that's, to prevent it from, getting a little too popular. He says, never in Idaho's history has there been a cap on any tax credit. Interesting. Why? Well, because a cap is almost certainly unconstitutional on equal protection and uniformity grounds. So he'll be challenging this. And he says, my aim is to ensure that every family legally in the state of Idaho gets the benefit of school choice. And there was one other thing he said, in addition to my lawsuit to remove the unconstitutional cap, I will immediately begin working with homeschooling advocates on a trailer bill to ensure that the liberties and freedoms that homeschoolers in Idaho enjoy in Idaho are not infringed in any way as a result of the enactment of the new law. So that's kind of encouraging. To me, it's very disappointing that a perfectly good amendment to the Idaho Constitution, which would have actually updated the Idaho Constitution in its stand on education to our time and not back to 1890, would have been very helpful at this time. It was put in there under a very different kind of circumstances, but people still cling to it like, oh, but it's the way we've always done things. We can't change. There's just no possibility of change. But that amendment would have absolutely recognized that parents have the ultimate right to determine the education of their children. It would have done away with the compulsory school laws that not just Idaho, but pretty much every state was sold under the guise of state-controlled public education. I mean, look, it's an idea so good. We got to make everybody participate in it, or else. So that's one more change to look forward to. But in the meantime, those of you who feel like taking a victory lap, take a victory lap and know that education choice has come to Idaho, and we're at the very beginning of what it could possibly be. And when you think back, I think about 12 years, the Idaho Freedom Foundation, among others, have been fighting to try to get this through. Yeah, if you want to savor the sweetness, you savor the sweetness. You've earned it. I'm Brian Hyde, and this is Nowhere to Hide.
All reporters are biased. The Idaho Press Club are biased. All media, newspaper, radio.
To be completely blunt here, Brian, and there are plans to expand
indoctrination.
That's right.
Idahoans are also concerned.
Horror shot. That line would be moving a little bit farther west.
I'm like crying.
Nobody wants to see
Dark money is influencing